Hey, and welcome to the Applied Analytics Part 2 walkthrough and demonstration. This is really exciting. We are going to get in here and do real data cleanup, data harmonization, and data analysis, just like in the real world, in a real business context, and I could just not be more excited for a lab. Right? So you can see right off the bat, this looks an awful lot like Applied Analytics Part 1, and that's deliberate. Okay, if we look down through the questions, we're going to see that it is very similar. Right? You build something, and then we come down through and we answer some questions using a pivot table. We build something using a pivot table. We answer more questions. 1 through 13 are required, and then for the extra credit, we build something and we come down through and we answer questions up to 20. 14 through 20 are extra credit, just like Applied Analytics Part 1. All right, the big difference here, of course, is that we're going to use the skills that we've learned lately about data cleanup, data harmonization. And so right down through here, we'll see that through questions 1 through 4, we are importing data. And then and then cleaning it up. And 5 through 9, we are beginning our harmonization process to go ahead and get these same fields in shared fields between our national and our ISERC data set. Here we're going to do the same thing. We're already going to have our ISERC data imported, and so we will just harmonize it there, right? And then down here in the extra credit, we will actually, if we want to do the extra credit, we will combine the harmonized data, and then we will do our final analysis, right? So that's the pattern of this. When you download this in lab, it's going to be just like Applied Analytics Part 1, we've got the workbook that we're going to work through here, and then the answer sheet here, the thing that we'll upload. I don't need the answer sheet today, so I'm going to go ahead and close this down. I don't need that, and I'll maximize this window. And hey, let's take a preview of our workbook, all right? I'm going to come in here and look at the national sheet. This is empty. I'm actually going to import data into this in step 1 from the national text file that I downloaded when I downloaded this workbook. That's in my downloads folder right now. Over here on the ISERC sheet, this information is already in here, but hey, look at this. It's all messed up, right? I can see right away I've got a date field that's left aligning, stored as text, all sorts of problems here that I'm going to need to fix. I've got a lookup table here for, it looks like, product line, all right, using a code over here. I'll be using this as my VLOOKUP. And then I've got regional information the same way for a VLOOKUP. The question sheet that I will not be referring to today because I have the instructions printed out in front of me. You should also do the same thing. I provided you with a Word document for this that is going to be a lot easier to look at than switching back. And so, hey, with that, let's get started. All right, so this is pretty exciting, right? We're going to import data. We're going to clean it up. Then we're going to take more data over here. We're going to clean this up, and then we're going to use pivot tables to analyze these companies individually. Then we're going to combine the data once it's harmonized and do an overall comparison of these companies. All right, hey, let's get started. Here we go. Instruction number 1 tells me to create a new worksheet and import the data from the text file called national. And it gives me a hint and says, hey, text files are tab limited. All right, so new worksheet, that's this button right down here. New worksheet comes in there, and I always name my worksheet, so I'm gonna go ahead and call this import. Boom, there we go. And in cell A1, I want to import the data from the text file. So I'm gonna go data from text and go out and grab this. This is in my downloads folder. Practice national right there. All right, so it is delimited. It's going to be tab delimited. I do have headers, and so next, there we go. It's tab delimited. Beautiful preview. And I'm going to go ahead and finish this. I'm not going to worry about any data cleanup right now because I'm going to do that manually once I get this in here. I'm just going to say finish, and yep, cell A1, so okay. And there it is. And hey, guess what? We are dealing with real size data sets now. If I click over into here and I go control down arrow, whoa, 22,000 records. All right, so that means you're going to have to start using your keyboard shortcuts. If you try and use your mouse to do this lab, no way. Look at how long it would take me to try to highlight this one thing. If I just sat here and tried to get 22,000 records highlighted with my mouse, wow, I am going to grow old doing this. I've been doing that for a while, and I'm only up to 5,000 right now. That is not going to work. I'm going to hit Control Home to get back to cell A1. And let's start practicing our keyboard shortcuts, right? So instruction number 2 tells me to select all of the data, but not the column headers. So that means I'm going to start in A2. I don't want the column headers right now. I want to select all of this data. How am I going to do that? Control Shift, down arrow selects all of the 20,000 records in that column. Control Shift, right arrow selects it that direction. Now I'm going to copy this to my clipboard, right? I could do it here, but instead I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, Control C. Oh, get away from that. Control C. I've selected all the data, and now I'm going to paste this into the national worksheet starting in cell 2, A2. So I'm going to come over to the national worksheet, and I'm going to paste it right here in cell A2, right click and paste. There we go. It's all in there. It's looking beautiful. All right, hey, look at this. We need to start cleaning up some data. All right, I'm going to start cleaning up data here. And it looks like what it tells me to do is that the stuff in column E, the start date, is not usable right now. This is not stored as a date. Look at this. It's PO and then 11/29/2014. What we want is 11/29/2014, but we have this PO attached to it. What's going on there? I think that's the product code over here. This is attached to it. Either that's an import problem or it's some kind of smart numbering system. I would think it's probably smart numbering, but we need to get rid of that. And so what we need to do is look at the pattern here. PO, CS, PO, CL, CD. So there are 2 letters attached to the beginning of that. We can work with that. We can use text to columns to clean this up, and that's going to be a fixed width. There's no delimiter that I can work with, but that's a fixed width to chop off those first 2 letters. So instruction 3 says, on the national worksheet, modify the start date in column E using text to columns. There is no delimiter, and the date format is month, day, year. Keep only the date, do not keep the letters. All right, so here we go. I'm going to select right there without my column header, Control Shift arrow down. I've got all of my records selected. And now I'll go over here to text to columns. And is this delimited or fixed width? There's no delimiter. I'm told it's fixed width. Now, next, it shows me my little preview right here. And what I want to do is I want to chop between the PO and the 11. I want to chop it right there. So with my mouse right here, I just select that, boom, right there. So PO and 11 is separated. Next, I get my options of how to import these things. I want to drop these letters. See, I select whichever one's in black is selected. I'm going to select the letters and say, hey, do not import those. Do not import that column. Then I'm going to go over here to the date that I do want, and I'm going to say, hey, do import that, and I want you to bring that in as a date. So I'm going to say date, month, day, year. That's perfect. Tell this to finish, and boom, look at that. It's all cleaned up. We need to do the same thing for column F, right? So it tells me, instruction number 4 says, modify the ship date in column F using text to columns. The delimiter is a hyphen, right? It shows me a little dash, and the date format is month, day, year. Keep only the date, do not keep the letters. Same exact thing here, except now we've got POC 3 letters. Down here we've got PO, that's 2 letters, CL 2 letters. So there's no pattern to that we can get with a fixed width, but we do have a delimiter. There's a hyphen before every one of these dates that we want. So I'm going to go ahead and select my first one right there. Control Shift down arrow, text to columns, and I do have a delimiter this time. So I'm going to click next, and it's not a tab, it's not a semicolon, comma, or space, it's a special one. I'm going to say other, and I'm going to tell it, hey, it's a hyphen. And there we go, it separates it out beautifully. Next, all right, I do not want these letters, so do not import those letters. Come over here to the date, month, day, year, perfect. Finish that off, and there we go. So now we've imported our data, we've cleansed it, and the next thing we'll start doing in the next set of instructions is we're going to go ahead and create these fields that we want harmonized, because what we'll see is these are the fields that we need to create so we can do our analysis, and they'll be the same ones that we'll end up creating over here in ISERC, so then we'll be able to merge these. Okay, so in the next thing we'll do is create these harmonized fields. Instruction number 5 tells me to find a location using the RMA code. Right? So it says, in the field location, determine the value by using a parsing function for the leftmost character of the RMA. So the RMA over here, hey, this is a smart numbering system. The E at the beginning of that stands for east. This one down here stands for west. This one stands for south. So I need to parse that out using the left function. It's the leftmost character, so I'm going to go equals left, tab to get that started. The RMA function is the text that I'm after, and I want how many characters on the left? I want 1 on the left. Close that up. This is what my function looks like. Control Enter, and it parses out the E. Double click to send that down, and it's working beautifully. Instruction number 6 tells me to look up the region using a Vlookup function. Right? So I'm going to look up this E right here in the table regions, and that's right over here. Right? This right here, E stands for East, M, Midwest, etc. This is a table tools design. You can see it's named regions. It has 2 columns. I want the second column back. I head back over here. I'm going to write a Vlookup equals Vlookup tab. Look up the E right there. Look it up in the regions table. Boom, right there. Regions table. I want the second column back, and that's an exact match. Close that up. Take a look at my formula there. Control Enter, and that's working beautifully. Let me copy that down. Working great. Now, instruction 7 tells me to calculate the turnaround time on this repair. Okay, so we're going to take start date and ship date. So obviously some time elapsed between those. And then as you'll recall from your Applied Analytics Part 2 homework, we need to use this special function called Networkdays to figure out the actual work days, Monday through Friday, that occur between these, because we could just go one minus the other, but then that would tell us the number of days in between those, including non-work days, and that would screw up our analysis because we don't care about time that the company was closed and no one was working on these products. So we're going to need to use our Networkdays function here, Networkdays right there, and the way we do this is we just say, the start date is here, comma, the end date is here, or a start and ship date. Close that up. Take a look at our formula there. And when I go Control Enter, it calculates only the work days, Monday through Friday, that occur in between those 2 dates. I'll copy that down. My next instruction is just to use another VLOOKUP to come up with the product line. So I'm going to use the product code right here, the 2-letter product code. I'm going to look that up in the products table over here. If I click in here, design, it's called products. It has 2 columns. Come back over here and say, hey, equals VLOOKUP tab. Look up the product line here. Let's go find that in our products table. Right there. Don't be fooled by that product right there. That's a function. You want the products table right here with the little spreadsheet looking thing, comma, second column. That's an exact match. Control Enter, and there we go. We've got our printer coming up there. Beautiful. Now, instruction number 9 tells us to figure out if this product is relevant to our analysis, right? So this can be a little tough. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and move this little picture that we've got out here so I have a little space so I can work in here. And let's just take a look at how I'm going to do the product relevant. Right? So what it tells me is that calculate the value using this logic and the OR function. The value should be yes if the product line is a printer, or the leftmost character of the serial number is Q. If not, it should be no. So what are we saying? Well, we're saying that for our company to care about the repair, whether it's relevant to our analysis, it needs to be a printer because we're a printer company, okay? If you're talking about the repair time on a computer, that has nothing to do with our company. So we're not interested in that. Mobile computers, not interested, right? So what we're interested in is how fast you are at turning around printers. So is the product relevant? Well, if it's a printer, yes it is. However, there are all-in-one computers that actually have printers built in that are going to be relevant to our analysis. And we can find those by looking over here. If this smart numbering system, the serial number, if that starts with a Q, that's also relevant. Well, this one happens to be a printer, but let's find another one down here. Here's one with a Q. That's a computer. That's an all-in-one computer that contains a printer and is also relevant to our analysis. So we need to figure out how to do this. So let's do it in some steps and we'll put it together. One, I'm going to say, hey, are you here? Are you equal to the word printer? Sure is. True. Right? Well, let me say here, hey, what's the leftmost character of the serial number here? Well, it's an L. That's not a Q, right? So I could ask the leftmost character of this serial number, right? What is that? Well, that's going to be L, right? So then I could ask, is that equal to the letter Q? And it'll say, no, it sure isn't. So what I want to do is to write a logical statement that puts these together, right? So, or criteria asks, hey, are you true? Are you true? Are you true? If any of those things is true, then I'll come back as true. Our and criteria, as you'll recall, right, is are you true? Are you true? Are you true? If any of them is false, the whole thing comes back as false. So we're going to use or criteria here, and I'm going to say or. Okay? So, are you printer? Are you equal to the word printer? Oh, I need an equal sign in there. Equals. Are you equal to the word printer? Comma. Or are you the leftmost character of this serial number right here? So the leftmost character, are you equal to the letter Q? End that right there. Let's take a look at that formula right there. Or K2 equal to printer, and it looks like I've got an extra apostrophe in there. I better clean that up. All right, let's take a look at that again. So, or K2 equal to printer, or leftmost character of C2 equal to Q, and let's hit enter here. And what do we see true? Of course, because we had one true, one false. The or function only needs one true to come back as true. And so there we go. I've got this written right here. I can just copy this right here. Okay, I'm going to copy this to my clipboard. Control C to copy that, escape out of there. And now I'm going to come back over here, and this says the value should be yes if the product line meets this. So this is an if function, right? So I'm going to go equals if tab. I need a logical test that comes back as true or false. Guess what? I had a logical test right over here. I just copied it to my clipboard. So now I'm just going to paste it on in there, all right? So that comes back as true or false. In this case, I know it's true. I'm going to go comma. If that thing's true, then I want the letter yes, right? I want the letters yes. And comma, if it isn't, I want the word no. Now, you could have just written that all as one big thing, but I really like to go ahead and build these things in helper columns and helper cells when I have something long like that so I can get it figured out. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control. Well, first I'm going to show you a picture of this thing so you can see it. All right, so that's my function right there. If or K2 equal to printer, or the leftmost character of C2 is equal to Q, then it's relevant yes, and if not, no. Come back away from that, Control Enter, and let me copy that down, and let's take a look here. Printer yes, printer yes, printer yes. We come down here, computer yes. What's going on there? Leftmost character of the serial number is Q. All right, and so that's probably the toughest thing you have to do on this whole lab as far as the formulas go, but you can practice that and you'll have that no problem. Hey, we are done with the instructions for building this thing, and now we can start analyzing this using pivot table. And let's do it. All right, so question number one, and we're told to summarize this data using a pivot table. I'm done with these, so I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of those out there, delete, and I'm gonna come into this proper data set and create a pivot table, insert pivot table right over here, and OK onto a new worksheet. I don't want to get confused, so I'm going to call this the National Pivot. Boom, and let's get started. So here are the fields, right? Here are the fields in the same list that I found over here, RMA, product serial number. I like to alphabetize these things, so I'm going to come right into the settings wheel and say A to Z. Question number 1 asks me, how many rows of data are there? Well, hey, you know what? If I drag any text field, if I grab any field and bring it down here and I count it, that'll be it, because every one of those fields has the same number of records in it. So all I have to do is drag any one of these things. If I drag a text field down there, it will default to count. So let me just ask it, hey, how many RMAs do you have? 22,929, and that is our answer. Easy enough. Question number 2. How many failures occurred in the region East? How many failures in the region East? Let me get rid of RMA. And now you'll notice I am not, like in Applied Analytics Part 1, I taught you to always come in here and always go data and clear filters. But the analysis for these is really so straightforward in these pivot tables that I really won't be using a lot of filters. So unless I create a filter, I'm not going to worry about trying to clear filters because there's nothing to clear. I will rarely create filters because this analysis is just so straightforward. So how many failures occurred in the region East? Okay, so I'm just going to go and take failures, drag it down here and let it sum the count of that. And that's the sum of the failures in the entire data set, but I'm interested in regional. I'm going to come down into this, and here we go. Here's East. The sum of failures is 8,610. Number 3, I'm asked, how many failures occurred for product line mobile computers? So sum of failures again. I'm going to drag regions off of there, and it just wants to know about product line, right? So product line down to here, and it wants to know how many for mobile computers. Mobile computer, 2,822. Question 4 asks me, how many failures occurred with the start date in the month of January 2014? So I'll take product line off. I'm still interested in the sum of failures. This is going to be based on date. I'm going to come up here and find my date. I believe it says the start date, right? So bring start date down to rows. It defaults to this one. I'm going to come in here. I want to look and make sure I don't have an extra year in here. So I'm going to say, hey, group this. Show me just months and years. Okay. Good. It's only 2014. I'm asked with the start date in January of 2014. Boom, right there. There was 1,791 failures in January of 2014. Question 5. How many failures occurred with product relevant yes? All right, so I'm going to get rid of this, okay? Again, sum of failures. I'm going to go with product relevant down to rows, and yes, right there, 8,506. Question 6 asks me, how many failures occurred with product relevant yes in the region South? So this same thing, but we want to go ahead and add in region to this. Right? So I'm just going to go ahead and grab regions and bring it down below. And so we can see product relevant yes, region South, right there, 1,925 failures meeting that criteria. The last question for our national pivot table is which region had the highest number of failures? I'm going to go ahead and take product relevant off of the pivot table so that I'm just looking at my regions and the sum of failures. I'll go ahead and sort this largest to smallest, and we can see right here that East had the highest number of failures with 8,610. And hey, that's all we have to do to answer all the pivot table questions for the national worksheet. And next we'll move on to the ISERC worksheet. So the next set of instructions has us moving over to the ISERC worksheet. Here we go. It's already imported for us, and all we need to do is fix some of this stuff. All right. So it says, instruction number 2, it says on the ISERC worksheet, modify the ship date in column F using text to columns. Well, let's take a look at this. Ooh, hey, this is a date, but this is clearly being stored as text, all right? So it's left aligning instead of right aligning like numbers do. And so this is a problem, all right? So we need to get this fixed. How are we gonna do that? Text to columns, all right? So I'm gonna select this one here and Control Shift down arrow, text to columns. And so this is, we're not even gonna worry about this. What we wanna do is we wanna use the back end of text to columns, the re-import function. So I'm just gonna say next, forget about all this stuff, next. I do want to re-import this stuff. I don't want it to come in as general. I want it as a date. And what we need to do is look at this. We need to look at 2014, so the year's first, 05, that's the month, and then 21, that's the day. So that is YMD, year, month, day. Not this right here. Yes, YMD, year, month, day. Click Finish, and beautifully that gets fixed up for us. Instruction number 3 tells us to use the trim function to eliminate the extra spaces in the location field of column H. Well, what are we doing here? Well, let's take a look at this. And this location looks decent enough, right? It looks good enough, but this is Los Angeles, right? So, let me just write the word Los Angeles out here. Okay, Los Angeles right out there. And let me do a little test here. Let me say, hey, is this right here equal to this right here? Sure isn't. Well, why not? They're certainly spelled the same. It's because if we look in here, there's 1 space, 2 space, 3 spaces in between the LOS and Angeles, right? So to excel, that's a completely different word. Its spaces are a completely different word. So if I come in here and I fix this, 1, 2, and get that down to just 1 space, Control Enter, right? So now it's fixed. Now this turns to true, and so that works. So I need to clean all these up for my VLOOKUP function to work. If I right now tried to go and do a VLOOKUP over to the region table, it wouldn't work at all because it would come down here and it would not recognize Los Angeles or any of these other things with extra spaces in there. So I need to hop back over here and I need to get this fixed up or my VLOOKUP function won't work. Let me show you. I'll just do this to demonstrate. I'm going to go ahead and write my VLOOKUP, and I'm going to say use this right here and go look this up in the regions table, and it'll be the second column back and an exact match. And if I do that and I copy this down, well, a lot of these just aren't going to work, okay? And I certainly can't with 34,000 records. I certainly cannot go through here and manually fix this. What I need to use is the trim function, right? I need to use the trim function. And so I'm going to go ahead and Control Z to get rid of that VLOOKUP. So the easiest way for me to do this is going to be come up and create a helper column, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in here and select column I, right click insert for a new column, and I'm going to go ahead and put the name up here again, location. Come down in here and say, hey, use the trim function to get rid of those extra spaces for me, equals trim, tab. That's what I want to trim, the Los Angeles right there. Take a look at that function. It's super simple. Trim what you find to the left. And I'm going to copy this down. Oh, Control Enter. I'm going to copy this down. And there we go. I'm going to select this whole column. And I can't just copy and paste this over here, right? If I did, I'll show you what will happen. If I go Control C to copy, and then I come over here and I go Control V to paste, well, what happens? Well, I had a function that said trim what you find to the left. I copied it over here in a relative way, so it's trimming the number 1. That's no good. Control Z to undo. What I need to do is to come over here, Control C to copy, and I need to paste as values only. I'm going to come in here, right click, paste 1, 2, 3, values only. And there we go, we have it. All right, it went in there just nice. Now I can get rid of this helper column, right click, delete, and there we go. We're in good shape. Our next instruction is for us to use a VLOOKUP function using our newly cleansed location there. No problem, equals VLOOKUP tab. I'm going to use the Los Angeles right there. I'm going to look it up in the regions table. Boom, right there. The second column, and that's an exact match. Right there. Close that up. Take a look at my function. That's going to work out perfectly. Control Enter and send that down. Next thing for me to do is the turnaround time. Hey, this is an easy one. Equals Networkdays, same way we did before. come over here and say start date, ship date, easy function, control enter, send that down, and that is also working beautifully. That's all we have to do on the ISERC sheet, and next we will create the pivot table to answer the final required questions. All right, well, hey, we've got 6 required questions that we need to generate using a pivot table from this sheet. I'm going to get rid of these extra little helper cells out there, click anywhere inside of this data set, insert pivot table on a new worksheet, you bet. I'm going to name this the ISERC pivot, and here we go. Again, I have the list of field names in the order that was in the data set. I'm going to go ahead and alphabetize that for convenience. And here we go. It asks me, how many failures occurred in the region West? All right, well, failures, let's count those up. And let's go over here and let's find our region. And West, 10,581. That was question 8. Question 9 says, how many failures occurred for product line printer? So let's grab this one off of there. Product line printer right there. 9,234. It asked me how many failures occurred with a start date in the month of March 2014. Drag product line off. We're still looking at the sum of failures. I'm going to come up here with start date, bring that down. I'm going to add in year. So I'm going to group by months and years. Okay. Great, there's only 2014 data, and I'm asked about just March, and so March 2014, the sum of the failures was 2,933. Question 11, how many failures occurred with product relevant yes? Oh, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this date here, and just bring down product relevant to the rows. Product relevant yes, 13,040 failures. Question 12. How many failures occurred with product relevant yes and region Midwest? So that's this same table we have set up here. I'm just going to bring region down here. And so here we go. Yes in the Midwest, 1,283. Instruction 13, or question 13, this is the last required question. Which region had the highest number of failures? All right, so I'm going to take product relevant out. We're not interested in that criteria anymore, just the highest number of failures. And so we're just going to look through here, and I can see it's east, but I'm going to go ahead and sort this just so I can be sure, largest to smallest, and it is certainly east at 13,059. All right, so hey, that's the end of the required questions. In the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll combine these data sets and tackle some more difficult extra credit questions. So the next set of instructions tell me to create a new worksheet for the combined data. So I'm going to create a new worksheet right here, and I'm going to call this combined. And it tells me to copy the national data, including the headers, into cell 1 of the combined worksheet. So I'm going to head over to my national data here, and I'm going to select the whole thing. So to do that, I could use Control-Shift arrows, or I could just go ahead and go Control-A to select the entire data set. Control-C to copy. I'm going to head over to my combined worksheet, and I'm going to paste them right into here. Just paste. Okay. Widen these out a little bit so I can see everything. Looks good. Now, it tells me to freeze the top row, all right, because this isn't an Excel table, and if I scroll down, I'll lose the top headers. So it's really important that we keep those there. So to do that, all I need to do is just go up to View and come here to Freeze Panes and tell it freeze the top row. Okay. So now that's locked in there. When I scroll, it'll stay put, and that's going to help me out a bunch as I bring in the ISERC data. Instruction 4 says to copy the ISERC data, including the headers, into the combined worksheet below the national data. Be sure to include an empty row between the data sets, and the reason that we do that will become obvious here in a minute. I'm going to go over to the ISERC worksheet. I'm going to select all of this data, so I can use my control arrows, or even better is, or control shift arrows, or even better is Control A to grab the entire data set. Control C to copy. I'm I'm going to head over to my combined worksheet. Now, I need to get down to the bottom of this data. The easiest way to do that is control arrow down. Control arrow down. Now I go to the very bottom of this, and I'm going to go ahead and arrow, arrow, arrow to move down a little bit. I want one empty row in between these data sets. So now I'm going to paste this in here. I'm going to go here and paste. Right? So now I have the national data above and the ISERC data below. And we'll just take a look at this and we'll make sure that this is completely harmonized. Right? So I'm going to bring these up, and it sure is. RMA, product, serial number, failure code, start date, ship date, failures, location, region, turnaround time, product line, and product relevant. Right? So these are exactly harmonized. That's a beautiful thing. Right? So I can now combine these. All right. So the only thing that I'm missing is a column that designates what is national and what is ISERC. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. I want to get back up to the very top. So I'm going to go Control Home. That takes me back to cell A1. I'm going to go up here to column A and say Insert a column. And right here, I'm going to add a field name that says Company. Enter. And right below this, I want to say that this is all national data. Control Enter. And I'm going to copy this down. So now there's a designation that this is a national record, and for every one of those. I'm going to Control arrow down. And because we left an empty space, that stops right there for us. I'm going to do the same thing down here for the ISERC. I'm going to add in that this is an ISERC record. Control Enter. Copy this down. Now these are completely harmonized, and we have a designation which of these is national, which is ISERC. We can now combine these together. Right? Instruction 6 says complete the data sets by deleting the empty row and the redundant header row above the ISERC data. So I'm going to select this row, and I'm going to delete them. Right click and delete. Now look at this, we have one big combined data set. All right, how exciting is that? Now we can create a pivot table and analyze this aggregated combined data to really answer the questions that we wanted by comparing the ISERC and the National Repair Company to figure out which one is actually the superior vendor for us to outsource our repairs to. All right, so we're going to move on to making a pivot table. But before I do that, because I've combined and harmonized some data here, a really good check for me to do is to take a look at my data and make sure that there are not errors or NAs or blanks in any of this stuff. Maybe I didn't get this quite right when I put this together. Now, because we're looking at 57,000 records, there's absolutely no way I can do this by visual inspection. So what I want to do is to use my filter buttons, right? I'm going to come up here, I'm going to go Data, Filter buttons to bring these in, and then what I'll do is I'll just click through here to see what's here. ISERC National, all right? The RMA codes, it's a long list, all right? But what I'm looking for at the very end, I want to make sure there's no blanks or NAs. Those would naturally go to the end of this list. So I'm just going to look down at the end there. Then for product, all right? Product, again, I want to make sure that there's no NAs or blanks, any kind of error messages, all right? So I'll come down through here. Nope, good. Look at each and every one of these to make sure that I don't have any error messages or blanks, because that will really mess me up. All right, this all looks good, looks great. Yep, okay. Go down through each one of these. Looks great. Okay, I'm going to create a pivot table for anywhere inside this proper data set. Insert pivot table, new worksheet. And I'm going to call this one the combined pivot. Nope, that didn't take. Double click in there, combined pivot. Here we go with the extra credit questions. These are a little tough, right? But let's see what we can do. What was the average turnaround time for product line, barcode reader, regions east? and format to one decimal place. Okay, so instead of doing our sum of failures, what we're going to be really interested in now is comparing turnaround times, right? So we're going to go ahead and say, bring the turnaround time down here. I wouldn't want to sum this. I'm really interested in the average. So I'm going to go Value Field Settings and take this to Average. Okay. I'm going to go here, right-click, Number Format, bring this down to number 1 decimal place. Okay. There we go. The average turnaround time of the entire data set is 4.9, but we're asked about barcode readers in the East. So I'm going to, again, alphabetize my list, A to Z, and let's take a look at this. All right, so product line in the East. All right, so in the East. So location down here, and so, oh, hey, look at this. So we actually, okay, that's location, not region. There we go. I thought maybe we had an error there. I'm going to bring region down. There we go. Okay, we're only interested in barcode readers in the East. Barcode reader in the East right there, it is 4.6 days. Next, which product line had the lowest average turnaround time, excluding product line others? Okay, so all the product lines except others. And yeah, so it asks us to take a look at that. So I want to go ahead and get the product line here. We want to ignore other. We want to know which has the lowest turnaround time. And so look at this, 4.9, 4.9, 4.9. We're going to have to add some more decimal places to this. It tells us, hint, format to the 3 decimal places. I'm going to come in here, right, number format, and add 3 decimal. There we go. So if we look at it like this, and I sort largest to smallest, we can say that the one with the lowest average turnaround time was other. We're told to exclude that, so it's mobile computer is the next one. Question 16, what was the average turnaround time? Filter for these conditions. Okay, so we're interested in this criteria. Region South, product relevant, yes, and failure code not equal to problem not found. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're going to create a bunch of filters and we're going to look at the average turnaround time. So I'm going to get product line off of there, and we'll actually go ahead and use filters for this one. We're going to say we're going to have a filter for region. We're also going to have a filter for product relevant and for the failure code. And let's set each one of these. So region is South, okay. Product relevant is yes. And then failure code, we're interested in all of them except no problem found. Because, you know, in this analysis that we're doing right now, we're saying, hey, no problem found, that's when people return stuff and it's actually not broken at all. So that wouldn't really be a good thing for us to look at as far as what the actual turnaround time on repairs is. So we're going to exclude that by selecting multiple things, and we're going to say we want all of them except no problem found. Right there. We're going to leave no problem found unchecked. And okay, question 17 tells us to keep our filters exactly the way it is. We're going to keep this exact setup, but we're going to make a line chart for this based on date. All right, so we're going to bring the date field down. We're going to come here and bring the start date down to the rows. All right, so the start date down to the rows. And now we're going to chart this. All right, we're going to chart this making a line chart. We're going to click in here and we're going to go Analyze and Pivot Chart, Line Chart. Okay. And we're just going to take a look at this thing. We could mess with the axis over here, but hey, you know what? I'm pretty happy with this chart right now. And we're asked to describe this with some text, just like when we described our charts in Applied Analytics Part 1. And when I look at this, I would say that that the average turnaround time kind of was up and down throughout the year, and then we had this huge uptick between November and December. And that's how I would describe that chart. Okay, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to move on to question 18. And it tells me to make a pie chart showing the failure codes, all right, for product relevant. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of my filters. Boom, boom, boom. Get this reset back to the way that I like it. And I'm going to come up here and say Data, clear all filters. And here we go. I'm going to make a pie chart showing the failure code. So failure code down to rows. I want to filter to product relevant, yes. Product relevant, set that to yes. Okay. Sum of failures. So failures down to values for the sum. Now I can make a pie chart. Pivot tables, pie chart. Okay. And I really hate the default pie chart, so I'm going to do a little cleanup. I'm going to get rid of the legend over here. I'm going to add data labels right there. And then I'm going to format those data labels with the more options. That brings up my list of options over here. And I'm going to go in here and say, hey, forget about showing me the values. What I'm interested in is the percentage and the category name. And that'll do it for me. I'll click away from that. I do want to change the data labels to outside end. And there we go. That's pretty good for me. I'm going to close that up, make this a little bigger. And then we're asked to describe this chart. And I think what I would say is that electrical and mechanical problem make up the majority of the chart. That would be what would jump out to me and probably what you're asked about that chart. Okay, so I'm going to delete that chart. And hey, we are almost good and done with this. We have question number 19. It asks which of the two companies has the lowest average turnaround time for product relevant. Really what we were after throughout this entire thing. So I'm going to get failure code off of there, product relevant off of there, sum of failures off of here. I had a filter, so I'm going to go up to data, clear filter. Everything looks good. All right. I'm going to ask about the average turnaround time. Set this to average. Average turnaround time. Okay. And now, product relevant, yes. So I'm going to bring product relevant down to rows. And now I'm going to bring the company name down below that. Company right there. So for product relevant, yes, we can see that National is the faster company. And all other things equal, we would want to go with National because they have a faster average turnaround time on products that are relevant to our company. Right? Now, the very last question, number 20 in the extra credit section says, which region had the highest percentage of failures with failure code software problem? All right, so which region had the highest percentage of failures with failure code software problem? I'm going to go region to rows, and then I'm going to go, let's see here, highest number of failures, so I'll go failures, sum right there. We got to add in the failure code down here, software problem. All right, so I'm interested in which region had the most software problems. So actually, I'm going to reverse this. I'm going to bring failure code above region so that I'm looking at this. Which one of these, okay, which one software problems? So down here, which one of these regions had the highest for software problems? And if I look at that, again, it is East. It's 3,249. I can spot that right there. But what it's asking me to do is to make a percentage out of that. So I can do that easily. I can just right click and say, hey, show values as percent of column total. And then we can see East 5.63%. All right. Hey, that was the end of this lab, end of the questions. I know those extra credit questions were pretty tough. The lab itself is pretty tough, but hey, we're getting there to the end of this course and the end of Excel, and you should be able to do this stuff. And so practice this a bunch and enjoy your Applied Analytics Part 2 lab. This is how we really do stuff out in industry, and so this will serve you well if you can get this stuff down.